Some choices change everything. Some moments define the rest of your life. And sometimes, those moments come when you least expect them, when you're caught off guard, when the world you thought was safe suddenly shifts beneath your feet. That night, I wasn't prepared for what was coming. It was late. The kind of late where the house should have been silent, where everyone should have been asleep. But something wasn't right. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension I couldn't quite place. I had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind drifting in and out of restless thoughts. Then, a sound. Soft, faint, but deliberate. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't just the usual creaks of the house settling. This was different. I sat up slowly, straining to listen. The hallway outside my room was dark, the soft glow of the night light barely illuminating the edges of my door. And then, a shadow. Moving. A chill ran down my spine. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the edge of my blanket. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things. But my body wasn't convinced. My pulse had already picked up speed, my breath coming shallow and uneven. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. The screen lit up, casting a soft blue glow across my room. It was past midnight. Too late for anyone to be awake. Then, a knock. Soft, hesitant. Right outside my door. My heart leapt into my throat. I hesitated, every nerve in my body screaming at me to stay still. But then, "Are you awake?" His voice. My stepfather's. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Yeah." There was a pause. Then, "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Something about this felt wrong. He never came to my room this late. I took a slow breath. "Yeah, sure." The door creaked open, and there he was. My stepfather. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his posture tense. He wasn't dressed for bed, he still wore the clothes he had on earlier, like he had been sitting up, waiting. I shifted slightly, pulling my blanket tighter around me. "What's going on?" He hesitated. Then, "I need to talk to you." A strange unease coiled in my stomach. "Okay." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should have, sending another shiver down my spine. He sat down on the edge of my bed, his hands clasped together, his gaze fixed on the floor. "There's something I need to tell you." My pulse pounded. "What is it?" He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "It's not easy to say." I forced myself to stay still, to keep my breathing even. "Just say it." He looked up then, his eyes locking onto mine. And what I saw there, it made my stomach drop. Regret, hesitation, and something else. Something I couldn't name. "I've been keeping a secret." My fingers dug into the blanket. "What kind of secret?" His jaw tightened. The kind that changes everything. The room felt smaller. The air thicker. I swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" He hesitated. Then, "I made a mistake. A long time ago." A strange, sinking feeling settled in my chest. "What kind of mistake?" His hands clenched. One that I never thought would come back to haunt me. My breath came quicker now, my heartbeat hammering. "Just tell me." He took a slow breath. Then, finally, "I got involved with someone I shouldn't have." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to piece together what he was saying. "What do you mean?" His gaze dropped. "Before I met your mother." I waited, every muscle in my body tensed. "And?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "And she just found me." A cold wave of dread crashed over me. I blinked. "Who?" His lips parted slightly, his throat working like he was struggling to get the words out. Then, "Someone I walked away from. Someone I thought I'd never see again." My chest tightened. "And what does she want?" His jaw clenched. "She wants the truth." The truth. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. "And what is the truth?" He let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. "The truth is, I had a child with her." The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. I stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke, that I had heard wrong. But his face, his expression told me everything I needed to know. I sucked in a shaky breath. So, I have a sibling. He nodded slowly, his gaze heavy with something unreadable. A brother. A brother. A person who had existed this whole time. A person I had never known about. I pressed a hand to my temple, trying to make sense of it. Why are you telling me this now? He hesitated. Then, because he wants to meet you. My pulse stuttered. I swallowed hard. And you're asking me, what? His voice was quiet. I'm asking you to help me decide what to do. I sucked in a slow breath. What does Mom know? A muscle in his jaw twitched. Nothing. My stomach dropped. You never told her? His expression darkened. I was going to. Then time passed. And then, I didn't. I let out a shaky laugh. And now he just shows up? He nodded. I don't know how he found me, but he did. I stared at him, my thoughts spinning. There was no right answer. No simple choice. I had to decide. And whatever I chose, nothing would ever be the same again. The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating. My stepfather had a child. A son. A secret he had buried so deep that even my mother didn't know. And now, that secret was clawing its way to the surface. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in. My pulse pounded in my ears. I swallowed hard. And you're asking me to help you decide? He nodded, his gaze steady but troubled. I don't know what to do. If I tell your mother, it will destroy her. But if I don't, I'll be lying to her. Again. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the blanket. Why now? After all these years. His throat bobbed. He found me. He says he's been looking for me for a long time. My stomach twisted. And what do you want? His lips pressed together, his hands clasped in front of him. I don't know. Part of me wants to leave it buried. But he's my son. I owe him something. I exhaled, my thoughts spiraling. Does he know about Mom? About me? His expression darkened. Yes. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. What does he want? To meet you. The words sent a jolt through me. I blinked. Me? He nodded. He said if I won't acknowledge him, then maybe you will. I stared at him, my pulse racing. I had spent my entire life thinking I was an only child. And now, out of nowhere, I had a brother? A stranger? A person who had spent his life searching for the man sitting in front of me? I let out a shaky breath. And if I say no? His jaw tensed. Then he said he'll tell your mother himself. A cold wave of dread washed over me. So it's a threat. He hesitated. I don't think he means it that way. He doesn't want to be ignored. I ran a hand over my face, trying to steady my thoughts. Where is he? He's here. In town. My stomach twisted harder. So you already spoke to him? Yes. Briefly. He sighed, leaning back, rubbing his temples. He doesn't hate me. He just wants to understand. I swallowed hard. What did you tell him? That I needed time. His eyes lifted to mine. That I needed to talk to you first. A strange lump formed in my throat. And what if I don't want to meet him? His shoulders sagged slightly. Then you don't have to. A pause. But I think you should. I stared at him, my heart hammering in my chest. What was I supposed to do? This wasn't my mistake. This wasn't my past. And yet, somehow, it was now my problem. I let out a slow, measured breath. Where does he want to meet? His eyes flickered with something I couldn't place. Tomorrow. At a diner downtown. I hesitated. Then. Fine. He straightened slightly. You'll go. I nodded, though uncertainty still twisted inside me. But you're coming with me. His lips pressed together, and after a long moment, he nodded. Okay. The next day. The diner was quiet. The kind of place where the air smelled like fresh coffee and worn leather seats. My stepfather and I walked inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. And then I saw him, sitting at a booth near the window. I don't know what I expected, but when our eyes met, something inside me shifted. He looked like him. Like my stepfather. The same sharp jawline, the same intense stare. But there was something else, something that didn't belong to him. Something foreign. He stood as we approached, his movements tense, unsure. My stepfather inhaled deeply. "This is my daughter." The word sent another shiver through me. Daughter. For the first time, I wasn't just someone's stepdaughter. I was someone's sister. He studied me, his eyes flickering with emotions I couldn't name. Then, "I'm James." His voice was steady, controlled. But there was something beneath it. A weight. A history I didn't know. I swallowed hard. "I know." A small smile tugged at his lips. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come." I glanced at my stepfather. Neither was I. Silence stretched between us. Then, "I didn't come here to ruin your life." His voice was softer now. "I just wanted to see where I came from. To understand." I studied him carefully. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look bitter. Just tired. I let out a slow breath. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated. Then, "Nothing. Just a chance." A lump formed in my throat. I looked at my stepfather, at the man who had made this choice, who had created this mess. He had made his decision a long time ago. But now, the choice was mine. I could walk away. I could pretend this never happened. Or, I could stay. I took a breath, my heart pounding. Then, finally, I sat down,